film and TV side of the internet loves to dunk on bad CGI. It happens so often and has gone on for so long, but has become particularly pronounced over the last several years, with reports of crunch at animation studios working for Marvel igniting calls for VFX artists to unionize. But as much as everyone loves to take CGI to task for how easy it is to screw up if the people making it aren't treated well or given enough time, it's still important to remember that practical effects don't always get it right either. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with the 10 worst practical effects in movie history. Number 10. Terrible live action and animation hybrid, Cool World. There are many reasons why Who Framed Roger Rabbit looks as good as it does, but it all boils down to a lot of things going right exactly when they needed to. If the stars hadn't aligned for Roger Rabbit the way they did, one of them being Bob Hoskins, we'd have gotten, well, something like Cool World. Cool World goes for the same kind of animation and live-action hybrid that Roger Rabbit does, but without the same careful attention to detail. No bumping the lamp in this movie, instead the audience is riddled with constant reminders that Brad Pitt is not looking at a real person. When Roger Rabbit walks across a room, you can see his feet touching the ground as he moves. Every little detail in the geography of the scene has an impact on how he looks and behaves. Meanwhile, Hollywood looks like she's constantly hovering just above the ground. There's no dynamic between the animated characters and the live-action environments and people. Cool World is what would have happened if Roger Rabbit didn't have the budget and ingenuity that it did, and was the fitting final nail in the coffin of Ralph Bakshi's time in Hollywood. Number 9. David Harbour's Hellboy, Hellboy 2019. Prosthetic makeup can be one of the coolest parts of any movie, bringing fantastical creatures to life through clever application of makeup. At least that's the case if you do it right. If you do it wrong, then the illusion is broken by how fake-looking or feeling the makeup is. For a perfect point of comparison, look no further than the differences between the 2004 and 2019 versions of Hellboy. Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, designed by the great Jake Garber, was a masterpiece of makeup, perfectly matching actor Ron Perlman's face and moving along with him to make one of the most expressive and sympathetic of the filmmaker's many monsters. 2019's Hellboy, designed by the talented but poorly utilised Joel Harlow, meanwhile, was none of those things. Problems with the script aside, the makeup just doesn't hold a candle. David Harbour was an inspired choice to portray Hellboy on paper, but the makeup is not made to accommodate his face, causing him to come off as stiff and lifeless, which, considering that the story of Hellboy literally hinges on the audience's ability to connect to this demon that longs to be human, is kind of a problem. The hell of it is that the rest of the movie looks pretty good. Not as good as the Del Toro movies, it's hard to follow up a Del Toro project and measure up, but creatures like the Baba Yaga prove that talented people worked on this movie, which makes the final product all the sadder. Number 8. Duck costumes, Howard the Duck. While puppets and makeup are one very often effective means of practical effects, there are often dividends to be found in animatronics. You know, as long as you have the time to make them work properly. Time was something that Howard the Duck did not have. With a deadline far too tight to make animatronics that could be trusted to not explode in the middle of filming, Universal turned to other solutions. That solution being to just stick duck heads on the actors and call it a day. A total of 6 actors were used to portray the eponymous Howard, and a whole battalion of puppeteers were called in for the more complex movements. But the stiff, lifeless head and face are what ended up sealing the deal for this wannabe blockbuster. While the eye movements help it maintain some degree of emotion, putting it on the lower end of the list, it does not come as a shock that Marvel has since slotted Howard the Duck into the full CGI character category, which is really where he belongs. Number 7. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costumes, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. The 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies are an interesting case study in how good practical effects demand a high budget and lots of time. The first 2 movies had amazing costumes for the Turtles, designed by none other than the talented puppeteers at the Jim Henson Company. However, Henson's creature shop doesn't come cheap, so when the budget was slashed for the 3rd film, things took a turn for the worse. The costumes we got for Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello and Raphael in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 do not hold a candle to the first film. Stiff, lifeless, trapped in a single blank facial expression. Literally every pitfall that the Henson team narrowly avoided, the team for the 3rd movie fell flat on its face into. This made the problems that the suits of the first 2 movies faced even more apparent. The wide mouths made it easier to see the actors underneath, especially on modern TVs and monitors. The heavy costumes can be hard to move around in, and it's very obvious when the actor underneath is struggling. It all culminates into this surreal experience of a film that would almost be ironically compelling if it weren't for all the puns. Number 6. The Shark, Jaws 4: The Revenge. The original shark prop for the first Jaws movie, nicknamed Bruce, was infamously buggy and ineffective. But Steven Spielberg and production designer Joe Alves worked around that, leaned into the fact that the prop couldn't be shown a whole lot, and the result is one of the scariest movie monsters of all time. Jaws 4: The Revenge does not share in this ingenuity. The tricks the movie borrows from the original by movie 4 lack the same punch, not helped by the fact that the shark itself looks naff when it does show up. Bruce wasn't the best prop in the world due to, all the sinking, and needed people like Spielberg and Alves to make it sing, but it was still a pretty good prop in its own right. The shark for Jaws 4, by comparison, looks completely atrocious, made worse by amateur filmmaking that takes techniques from the original without really understanding it. This film and this terrible, terrible shark prop were the last death knell of the Jaws franchise, and for good reason. Number 5. The Baby, American Sniper. American Sniper is remembered for two things. One is its status as half of the 1-2 punch alongside Guardians of the Galaxy that proved Bradley Cooper was an actor to be taken very seriously. And the other is the fact that they really, honestly wanted you to believe that Cooper was actually holding a real baby instead of an obviously fake baby doll right out of Toys R Us. Director Clint Eastwood attempted to find an actual baby to use in this movie, but kept running into the problem of the babies they brought on getting sick in the middle of filming. At his wit's end, he ended up going with a fake baby. Even if you somehow don't immediately notice the baby itself is fake, the way Sienna Miller and Bradley Cooper hold it will clue you in quickly that this is not a real baby. The weight is just off, and Miller and Cooper act in more exaggerated body language to try and sell it, which ironically just makes it more noticeable. Number 4. Dick Jones's Death, RoboCop. RoboCop is one of the coolest movies ever for multiple reasons, and the excellent special effects are high up on that list. This, however, is not one of them. While only on screen in Paul Verhoeven's film for a few seconds, the more you look at the Ronnie Cox puppet they made for his character's death scene, the worse it gets. The proportions are all wonky, the head's not quite right, and just call it whatever the hell those things were in Wild Blue Yonder, cause his arms are too damn long. Again, it isn't a huge problem, considering that the puppet is there for maybe a second or two before the scene cuts away anyway, but HD screens make it immediately noticeable, and you're left feeling relieved that Murphy got rid of whatever weird alien thing was running around pretending to be Dick. Number 3. The Selfsurgery Scene, The Terminator. HD TV screens and computer monitors have proven themselves to be the bane of most old-school movie effects, and the original Terminator is no exception. While the majority of the effects in James Cameron's tech noir classic hold up, there is one scene that suffers on repeat viewings, and that is the self-surgery scene where the Terminator fixes his face after his last encounter with Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. The main problem is the skin, which looks just too plastic to be convincing. Yes, obviously the skin is fake in universe as well, but the point of the Terminator is that they blend in perfectly with humans. Also, the proportions of the face are all off. The puppet just looks nothing like Arnold Schwarzenegger at all. Add that onto the usual trappings of mid-80s, low-budget animatronics, where the movement never feels natural enough to overcome the uncanny valley, and you get a scene that is creepy for all the wrong reasons. Number 2. Giant Rabbits, Night of the Lepus. Night of the Lepus, a very, very loose adaptation of the novel Year of the Angry Rabbit, focused on the set piece of the book where giant rabbits attack, and expanded it to a feature-length monster movie. It does not take long to spot the main problem with this endeavour. Bunnies are not scary. So how do you get around this little conundrum? Simple. You don't. Oh, the film tries, with director William F. Claxton employing everything from camera tricks and use of props to make them appear larger, to slow-mo to make them look more menacing, and even splattering ketchup on their noses whenever they kill a character to make audiences fear bunny rabbits. But what the film maybe didn't realise was that giant bunnies with little globs of ketchup on their noses are not a concept that inspires fear. If anything, it inspires aww. Because, and this cannot be overstated enough, bunnies are not scary. The film was a staple of late-night schlock movies, both in the drive-in and on TV, and really that's always been where a movie that thinks giant bunnies are scary belongs. Number 1. Tobanga, From Hell It Came. From Hell It Came, besides being the birthplace of one of the greatest critic quips in history, and To Hell It Can Go, is also home to one of the worst movie monsters of all time, Tobanga. By far the greatest tragedy of concept not translating to screen, Tobanga was created by Paul Blaisdell, creator of such Golden Age drive-in staples like The Saucer Men and The It That Conquered the World. Tobanga, needless to say, was not one of his better creations. You have to picture the poor actor inside the suit sweating his life away as he stumbles from scene to scene while his fellows try desperately to play off this ridiculous costume as if it's legitimately scary. The beast can't even move his arms completely, as only his arms from the elbow down are actually movable. One of the worst thought-through monster designs in film history, it's not shocking to know that this relic of the golden age of monster movies is mostly forgotten, save for the most sadistic of schlock lovers.